Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for the introduction. And so my name is Juha Terilä, and I will talk about power markets, so electricity markets. And you will soon see what they have to do with graphics or graphic design. So first, something about myself. So I have some background on software design. So I have done lots of programming, software design, and software architecture for Nokia mobile phones. And then when Nokia terminated in my hometown, or they shut down their factories, then I just changed. I started studying economics, and then I later focused on electricity markets or energy markets. So currently I'm working as an economist on the market surveillance team at the Finnish Energy Authority. So Finnish Energy Authority is it's an authority. There is one in every country, basically. In Poland, you have URE, Urząd Regulacji Energetyki. Thanks. So it's like in Germany, there is Bundesnetzagentur. In Great Britain, there is Ofgem, and so on. And so in Finland, there's just the Finnish Energy Authority. So what we do is the same thing. So we survey the market so that there is no like market manipulation, so that prices are fair and no one is like cheating on the market. But actually, this REMIT regulation is a bit larger. So the idea of this REMIT regulation, which we have to follow, is that we have to build confidence in the integrity of the markets. So that's something more than just finding market manipulation. So what do I do then in practice? So if you work as an economist at the Energy Authority, so what do you do then? So maybe a bit surprisingly, I actually have lots to do with different kind of graphics. So I generate and update and analyze lots of graphs. So I have thousands of them, or basically I think I have tens of thousands of different graphs which look like this. And I just use basically Python scripts which generate those graphs and then update those graphs with the latest data and then analyze those graphs. So here are some examples. So there are from different perspectives and different time frames, different companies, and so on. Okay, so why do we use these graphs so much? The reason is that there is so much data coming from the market. So this is an example. So I calculated that we receive something like 100 megabytes of compressed market data every day. So that is something like 30 songs in MP3 format. And if it's uncompressed in a readable format, so like here on the right, so there is, for example, an example of one trade. So there's a quantity and the price and so on. So if you uncompress it like that, we get some like 77 million lines like this every day. So it's obvious that we cannot, when just reading this text format, we cannot find anything meaningful just from this text format. So therefore, we use these graphics. So we visualize this data, and then it looks something like this. And then we can easily see that there is something like a different kind of anomalies, like for example here, this hour is very different in some sense, and then we can take a further look at that. These 3 days are different. There is some shift over here, and usually there is a pattern like this, but then there are some outliers over here. And so it's something like a bit like a music. So if you listen to a song, some piece of music, there are certain elements which are there, like there's certain rhythm, certain chords are used, certain melody. And if there is something strange, if the rhythm, for example, suddenly changes, you would immediately notice that. So even if you're not professional in music, you would notice that. So same thing here. We visualize data in some way, and you would notice quite easily if something is out of rhythm, because there are like certain patterns which are replicated, but if they're not, you would notice. Okay, so but market surveillance, it's not only about detecting this market manipulation. So as I mentioned, the idea is to build confidence on markets. So the first thing is that we have to make sure that nothing illegal is going on there. But the second thing is that if there are some strange incidents going on the markets, we have to explain it to the public that why this actually happened and what is the reason behind this incident, because there are often some kind of strange incident that people are like wondering that this market cannot be functioning properly, or there's something strange in the market. Then we just have to explain that why that is not the case. So visualizations are useful in both of these. So in the first case, when we find anomalies, but in the second case, because it's fast to create, we have tools which we can use to create fast some different kind of visualizations, and then we can just express complex things easily with visualizations. And then you can present some counterfactuals with them. So I will show you some examples what we have done, for example. So this is my Twitter account. You can find it in Twitter or X. So this is my style in Twitter. This is what I do. So I publish this kind of tweet chains. So one chain have something like 10 to 20 different tweets, but then one tweet contains like one graph and then a small text where I'm explaining that what's going on in each page. So if there's something strange on the market, I publish some kind of tweets which explain what's going on, what's happening in the market. Okay, if you take a look at this, what happened in May 2022, when this energy crisis started. So in Finland, electricity imports from Russia were suspended in May for the reasons we all know, I think. So that was actually quite big thing for Finland, because Russian imports of electricity covered something like 10% of Finnish electricity consumption. So it means that can have a huge effect on the market. So there's a serious risk of blackouts or outages. There is not enough power as much as consumption is. So what to do at this stage was we had to tell to the public that there's something, this is very serious. So we have to do something. Because in Finland, electricity is consumed most in winter time because of electric heating. So when it's cold, then electric heaters are used, so the electricity consumption increases a lot. But so summer is not a problem. But we knew in May already that there will be problems in the coming winter if you don't do anything. So we were trying to communicate to the public that this is actually very serious. We have to do something so that we can survive this winter without any blackouts or like a super high prices. Okay, so what can you do then if your imports are cut? What can you do then? Because in electricity market, this consumption and generation and imports, they have to be balanced at all times. So when the imports are cut, then you cannot like replace it. You cannot build new generation facilities very fast, not in a few months. It usually takes several years. So we couldn't build any generation facilities. The only thing we could do was to reduce our electricity consumption. So we started this campaign. It was a campaign organized by the Finnish government. So it's called, in English, it's Down a Degree. So the idea is that everyone would cut their consumption a little. So then together it would be enough to help this problem in the imports. So there was this government campaign which encouraged people to reduce their consumption. And if we see what happened, this actually worked extremely well. So you will see here that at this point, this red curve is the average consumption and blue curve is the realized consumption. So in this beginning of September, this consumption dropped something like 7 to 12%, and then it stayed lower for the whole winter. And therefore, we didn't have any problems in the wintertime. So no outages, no super high prices, everything went fine. And I think it was mostly because of this campaign that we were like wanted to cut the consumption, and that actually worked very well. Okay, but if you reduce your electricity consumption, that's not basically a good thing because you wouldn't consume electricity anyway more than you would need. So it means for household maybe that you turn the temperature down in your apartment, or for some industries that they will shut down some facilities. So it's not that what you want to do. So you would do that. You would want to do that only when it's absolutely necessary. So when there is a serious stress situation in the network. So this is an example how we try to follow this situation, that how close to this problems we are at each moment. So this graph, I'm not going into details of this, but the idea is that this black curve is consumption and these colored bars are generation. So this black curve has to stay inside these colored bars all the time. So here are just this free capacity is moved above this black curve. So the margin here, the margin here tells that how close to the inadequacy situation we are. So this is an animation. So it's just so this is something that you can actually calculate very close to real time. So you can basically see because there's lots of data published from electricity market in real time. So you can easily calculate that today situation is like this. And when you know, for example, weather forecast, you would also guess something for tomorrow. So this you can actually show in real time that how close to the problems you actually are. And in this case, you would see here that this black curve is below this upper limit of this colored area all the time. So then there were some tight situations, but nothing very, very serious. This is another example what we were publishing. So if the temperature is very low in Finland, then the consumption gets high. And if it's not windy, there's not much wind power. So then also there are problems because of this less amount of wind power. So in this case, you would see in the x-axis there is a temperature, and when you go to the left, that is colder weather. And when you go in this y-axis, if you go down lower, that would be less wind power, and higher you go, there was more wind power. So you have problems when you are on this lower left corner, so it's very cold and no wind. So you can actually calculate probabilities that how close to problems you are when the weather conditions are something like this. So each point is 1 hour, and this is historical data from since 2014. So we calculated this for this winter. And basically, so when you can forecast the next day weather, then you would know where you are in this graph. And then you know how close to this problem area you are. So in this case, if you're in this lower left corner, the redder the point is, the more problematic this hour is. So in that winter was quite mild, so we didn't go any time into this very cold area. Actually, last winter we were there, but not at that time, so it also helped a lot. Okay, so these red points are always 24 hours, so 1 day. So you would see that this was, for example, quite difficult, but not too difficult. Okay, and then what you can do is that you can calculate this, create this kind of graphs for different conditions. So for example, if you reduce your consumption, then this problem, as you can see now, when there is less consumption, this problem area gets much smaller. So then you can tolerate much colder weather and less wind. So this was just a way how to follow this situation, how close to problems we actually were. Okay, then how about last winter? So there was new huge nuclear power plant up and running. It started like 1 year ago. So the idea was that it would more or less replace these imports from Russia. So all experts were saying that there shouldn't be any problems. And I was also saying that, so people were asking a lot that how about this winter, will there be similar problems as in the previous winter? And but we were saying that no, because of this big power plant, there won't be any problems and the prices will be low. So this my tweet, we are kind of simulated the market for the coming winter, and I forecasted the prices for the coming winter. It's in the last figure is the forecast. So okay, this tweet ended up in the biggest newspaper in Finland. So this is not very usual. So if we like as an energy authority, if you want to often we want to have something published in the newspapers, but we cannot just order them that now you have to publish this, but we can give them ideas for the journalist, and then they decide that whether they publish something or not. Okay, so this was published in the newspaper. So at this point, I started getting a bit nervous because I was forecasting the prices, and of course the prices are varying very much. So there was a risk that I was totally wrong. So let's see what happened then. Okay, there was this one incident which we call Black Friday. So it was in November last year. So there was a human error for some market participant. They were selling too much on the market, and they didn't have that power actually. So that caused the prices to plunge to -500, which is the minimum price, lowest price that can be there. So if the price is negative, it means that when you consume electricity, you would also get paid for that electricity. So you get the electricity and you get the money. So more you consume, more you get paid. So that is a very strange situation, and of course lots of people were saying that the market is not working properly in this kind of case, that there's something seriously wrong in these markets. And of course we were trying to say that why this happened and what people should do. Because what people were doing, there were kind of here are some examples. So saunas are consuming lots of electricity in Finland usually. So many people were turning their stoves in saunas on and then just left the door open and kind of heating the apartment or the air. And in this case also, some people were taking electric heaters outside and just melting the snow or heating the air. So just trying to consume as much as possible. Of course, that's not very smart because it causes lots of stress to the power network, and there were actually lots of fuses were blown. So it was not good for the physically for the network. So, but that was a bit problematic for us because it was difficult we were trying to say that, because our basic message is that markets are working properly and there is nothing wrong with them. But in this case, basically, this was also a surprise to us that something like this could happen, that a human error could cause something like this. So it was difficult to say that you should not react on the price in this case, because it means that then you admit that there is something wrong in the market is not functioning properly. So it was a bit confusing for us also. And another thing was that there are some company confidentiality issues. So we knew because we were investigating this issue. So we knew what happened in the company and what was the reason behind this error, but we could not share it because of these company confidentiality issues. So we couldn't say everything what we knew. So what we could do, we could use something like aggregated data, where you cannot find this one market, but one company, or blurred data, or something like that. Okay, another incident was in January. We had a super high prices. So earlier record price was 1,000 euros, but then in January we had 2,000 euros. And that was, of course, also a surprise for many experts. And yeah, quite many people came say. I got quite much feedback from the public that So I had forecasted these prices in autumn and said that the prices will be much lower this winter. There won't be any problems. And then suddenly there are record high prices. And of course, people were saying that, okay, you don't understand anything about electricity markets because you said that this would happen, but then something else happens. But the reason for this was that it was actually extremely cold in that time. You can see from here that in the first week of January it was much colder than, for example, last winter any time. Okay, I took this a bit personally, but what did I respond was this blog post. So these are 80 graphs, so all about this one incident. You can find it in this website. So it kind of explains that what was the reason behind these high prices, and like showing that okay, I was wrong in the forecast, but still it was something very like unexpected things happened. So trying to explain the background for this incident. Okay, so our job is like we try to increase trust in the market, but this is actually something you could think a little bit broader way. So this is Finnish government communications guidelines from last year. So the guidelines say that central government communications, the purpose of that is to support democracy, and openness is the foundation of central government activities. So actually this kind of open and timely communication is something that is quite important in supporting democracy. So people, not everyone has to know all the details of electricity market. We don't expect that. But if someone wants to know what's going on in the markets, it's good that they have a way to get deeper knowledge and understanding of these markets. So we noticed during that energy crisis that this communication about in the crisis time and about this incident is very important, and we have decided to increase that also later. Okay, I think that was it. So this is my Twitter account. So I do some bird photography as a hobby, and I have carefully actually selected this photo here. So there are like three cranes, and all are like singing a bit differently. So one in the middle is singing very powerfully, and the one on the right is like a very with stylish and beautifully way. But the one on the left looks a bit confused and then doesn't know what to do and what is expected from him or her. And so this is something we try to be something like those on the right, but sometimes we maybe look something like on the left. So we are kind of we don't always like succeed in our communication, but we have no kind of understand that we cannot always like be very successful, but accept that we sometimes fail. But we target on something on the right. Okay, thank you.